Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Thank you for joining today. We are back on the North Texas Beltline, and this time we are running the East Greenville Local. So the East Greenville Local picks up here in Kingston Yard, and you can see briefly our 5 pickups today. Everything that we grab is from track 3 on the east side of the yard, so we're heading over there now. Sometimes when trains are broken down in Kingston Yard, they might not necessarily kick the car all the way down, so whenever we get over here into track 3 and make our hookup, we always have to make sure to check that we have all of our cars. And turns out this time that we don't, so we're coming back to get this JRPX hopper. And then we'll move forward back to the east side of the yard, where we will leave one of the cars we currently have with us, and we'll take just 5 that are on our switch list. East Greenville Local is a pretty easy job. When you get to the location, there's a short run around. You never have a very long train, so it's just enough space. Sometimes it's not, but that's very rare. And then all the switches are trailing point switches, and the only type of rail cars it ever takes with it are covered hoppers. So you will see actually quite a bit of variation in the train, just because there are a lot of different types of covered hoppers and a lot of different manufacturers. But yeah, the East Greenville Local is a pretty short and fast job. If we were doing multiplayer, this would be one that I would give to someone who wanted a job to do, maybe waiting for a bigger or a longer job, or maybe waiting for Kingston Yard to get something done. And we could send them on a quick run over to East Greenville. So here we are setting out the car that we're not going to take, and then we'll go back and connect to the 3 we left over there on the ladder, and then it'll be a green light all the way to East Greenville. We've come a long way here on the North Texas Beltline. We are, I think, in the 12th or 13th video, probably, showing the different trains on the layout. Maybe even further than that. But there's not very many left, I'll tell you that much. We've got a big one coming up next with the West Greenville Turn. That is a very different train than the East Greenville Turn. West Greenville probably takes 2.5 hours for a good operator to run. You know, put a new person on it, it'll probably take them 3.5. And here we are crossing over the river, and next up will be Greenville. So this is currently the siding in West Greenville. If we take the first switch here, that will take us to West Greenville. We are not going to take that one. We are going to continue on. And when the siding ends, right here, and this is where we start down the path heading to East Greenville. There are not any of the trains that ever work this part of the area, so this is reserved specifically for us. Once you get an operator out here, if you're the dispatcher, you can just forget about them. They'll be doing their thing for a while, and the instructions would tell them that on their way back, they're supposed to stop just short of the creek here and radio in for clearance to continue on to the siding and then into Kingston Yard. Here are our pickups and setouts actually for East Greenville. Quite a bit of work to do. And this is our runaround track. So once we get here, we go ahead, cut our train, we run around, and then we're going to do the rest of the work via shoving moves. It is recommended, just from experience, that you run around first. I would not recommend that you try to do all your switching moves with all of these cars behind you, because then it would be a lot more difficult to set these out while you're trying to get stuff done. All right, we're making our move for our first industry here. Even though there's only 4 industries that are modeled in East Greenville, I think it comes out to 5 tracks. Yeah, 5 tracks. I will say one disadvantage of the East Greenville Local is that the track space is pretty limited, so you do actually have to clear spurs out usually when you're switching, so you can put your setouts in the back. And so that's kind of what you're seeing here, is we're just kind of reorganizing a few cars and getting them in shape. The Kingston Yard crew doesn't block this train, so once we get out here, we're going to have to do a little bit of this extra work ourselves. But that's because they're busy blocking the West Greenville Turn, which is incredibly difficult. And the track arrangement in West Greenville is nowhere near as friendly. So if you don't block that train, then the operators are going to take forever. 5 hours, 6 hours to get the job done. When that video posts, you'll see what I'm talking about. Still a fun job though, but definitely stressful. Very much a puzzle. All right, so the move right now is we're going to pull this hole cut, and the JRPX hopper at the back is going to go with the JRPX hopper that we just left there on the spur, and they're going to both go back to the industry on the left. Overall, we have a fertilizer industry, we have a couple of grain industries, some co-op, lots of different activities going on here, but that's why we end up only shipping covered hoppers, is just because that's the kind of goods that we serve through these industries. You can see Emory in the background. If you remember back to the first North Texas Beltline video, it was running the Emory local, or the Emory turn, and that is all done in the back part of the scene here. This one is set just a little bit lower, with that little wall there to separate the two areas. It's just kind of the visual divider. Obviously in real life, Emory and East Greenville are like 40 miles apart, so they're not together. But, you know, it's a model. So in the model, you have to make compromises. All right, kind of the same deal. We are just doing a bit of rearranging here to get things organized. So pulling forward just a little bit before we make our cut. And then naturally we are shoving back to set a few cars out here at this industry, and then we'll be off to the next one. Now switching those 3 tracks in the back are especially difficult, just because you're extremely limited on space, and that's exactly why we left those 4 cars there, so that when we get back here to these 3, we do not need as much track space in order to get certain cars behind other ones. So we're going to go ahead and clear that one first to make room to do some switching. And then here, of course, we'll pull out the cars that we need, and we will set those over on the open track so that we can get our pickups, or sorry, get our setouts behind these. We'll be doing pickups from all 3 of these spurs right here, and I believe we're setting out to 2 of them, so not a bad day, pretty busy. I will say, having run this train 4 or 5 times, there have been some times where I enter the area with 1 train car, and there's been times where I leave with 1 car. And one time even, I think I left with 0 cars. I think I took like 7 or 8 cars as setouts, and there were no pickups. That made for an interesting ride back. When I made this route years ago, I didn't really mess around too much with details next to the track. Things like grass blinds or turf X or anything like that. And obviously that shows well on the layout. You can see it definitely could use some of that. It does look very much like a layout and not so much like a route. And, you know, that's okay. I don't really mind it too much. I'm not going to go back and add those. But I did learn from that, of course, and make some changes for some later routes that I made. If you've checked out the Brighton branch, you see that even though it's also a layout, it has many grass blinds and trackside details. And, you know, everything in time. So this was the first route I ever released to the public. So, you know, it was great. People received it well. It had a lot of downloads. I think last time I checked, it was around 2,000 total for all the different versions, which is super encouraging. But obviously, learned a lot, improved my skills, and continue to become a better modeler as time goes on. All right, I think we have just a couple more moves left to grab our last few pickups, and then we'll head back over where we left those cut of 4 hoppers, and then I think it'll be time to head out after that. All right, now it's time. Back to Kingston. We will run long hood forward on this one. There's not any area to turn the locomotive around, so we're just going to have to make do with long hood forward. A lot of horn blowing because there's a lot of crossings in this area getting into Greenville, so lots of railroad and lots of roads all interacting with one another. When I modeled Greenville here, I did break it up into east and west. In real life, Greenville is not broken up into east and west, but I did that for the sake of making it easier to model, helping people see the geographic difference in the two areas, and also it allowed me to create a whole separate train job, because one wasn't going to be enough. So some modeler's license there. On the 1-to-1 scale version that I'm making of the same area of Greenville, even though I'm making it full size in that one and I'm modeling the industries exactly as they are, on that one I am, I broke it into north and south Greenville just because, once again, one train coming into one area would be far too large to serve both areas, plus the track arrangements don't really make it easy to get from the north side of town to the south side of town. So I just broke it into two separate areas. It's still, of course, the same city, but served by the same railroad, of course, but with two different jobs. And now that we're back here in Kingston Yard, I will show the switch list that we would hand to the yard crew to tell them where everything goes. This is so they can classify the train as they break it down. But I just want to say thanks for joining in today and watching for another video on the North Texas Beltline. Next up, I've got a video on the Brighton branch coming out, a request to see some passenger operations, and then we have a video back on the Cox and Sub, actually a couple of videos back on the Cox and Sub, and then eventually I'll get around to another JMR video in a few weeks. But thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Don't be a stranger. Leave a comment, like, and I appreciate all of y'all's interaction. It's been a good time. We'll talk to you guys later.